So, what's the answer?
42.
But that doesn't mean anything.
Well, it would help to know what the question is.
But it's the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything.
That's not a question. Only once you know the true question will you have the answer. If you get the reference, I commend you on your taste. This may have been played for laughs before becoming a worldwide phenomenon. But it's incredibly apt when it comes to the question people commonly ask in pursuit of improved health and fitness results. Since my move to the industry in 2005, I continue to be amazed and saddened to hear the same questions coming up year after year. Not because there's anything wrong in asking questions or pursuing change, in fact, I commend it, but because there is clearly a passion to make a change from those asking the questions. Yet their line of questioning is often taking them further from where they want to be, and possibly to a dead end. The resulting frustration often extinguishing that fire that was within them. So today I'm going to go through a few of these questions. I'll leave timestamps below so you can jump around, looking at why they're damaging or a wasteful use of your time. And then I'm going to answer them anyway. Well, most of them. Though in doing so, I'm looking to reframe things back in the direction of your goals, hopefully avoiding that trip down a blind alley. Also, by giving an answer rather than just deflecting, I hope to give you some closure on the subject and allow you to move on. I'm drawing these questions in part from my experience. Questions that have been asked to me directly in my role as a personal trainer, a gym owner, a fitness coach, or a mentor to fledgling personal trainers that have come up on multiple occasions. But I've also taken inspiration from online sources such as Quora, forums, social media groups, and even going back as far as Yahoo Answers. So if you'd like me to review a question in a future video, drop it below or get in touch. And if a question you're interested in isn't here, check out other videos on the channel because you never know. Okay, let's get to the question. The concept of a set time that must be hit to be deemed as counting as a worthwhile workout is often the route to stagnation or regression. Ultimately, it leads to an all or nothing approach, where if a number is assigned and that time frame is not available for whatever reason, the default is to skip it and do nothing. I've discussed this in the video Too Busy for Fitness Progress. When setting goals, it can be advantageous to go big. However, when setting minimum standards, overdoing it can lead to frustration or even failure. So, if setting a minimum standard, it's worth ensuring this is something that is achievable regardless of circumstances. Often this question is rooted in the belief that there's a time frame that has been proven as optimal through scientific research. And whilst there have been many studies to draw from showcasing the effects of rep ranges, training intensity, and the effects of overdoing it or doing too little, this is little more than useful guidance to increased understanding of your own situation. There is no specific answer that is correct. Think about it. No study can allow for every parameter. Even if we take life out of it and consider purely laboratory conditions, what's your current condition? How suited are you to endurance? What are your goals? Then, without adding any conflicting lifestyle parameters back in, there are logistics. If you're training in a gym, how crowded is it? Are you going to have to queue for your equipment? Plus, there are semantics within the question. What do you consider the workout? Is it from the moment you arrive? Are we counting the warm up? What about stretching or mobility work? There's a ton of variables in there before we even start. But now let's throw life back into the mix.
Life. Don't talk to me about life.
Keep in mind, stress is one of the greatest inhibitors of progress there is. Regardless of where that stress comes from, lack of sleep, nutritional balance, water, control, or general overwhelm, it causes a chemical reaction resulting in elevated levels of glucocorticoids. Continually putting your body in that state is damaging to your health. Your ability to burn fat or grow muscle decreases, your sleep quality will drop, your immune system is weakened, and so on. So, even if there is a workout time that hits the sweet spot with regards to your current condition, training method, and goals, if it's going to add stress because it's compromising other parts of your life, then the benefits gained are severely diminished. Suddenly, what on paper was a solid answer to this question has led you down a detrimental path. Hey, this was me. What is factual is, it won't take more than a second to like this video. I'll mark it down as your good deed for the day. It's common in gyms to hear people spout information that sounds authoritative. One that regularly does the rounds is the concept of overtraining. The time given will often vary, but the principle is usually the same. Anything over an hour is overtraining. This is often accompanied by further scientific nuggets to back this up, covering the fact that your cortisol levels will rise and there will be a severe drop-off in your testosterone levels. And much of that is based on facts, but it's the connecting it together to come up with a globally applicable number that takes it from useful to bro science. Going back to a qualifying question from earlier, when does the workout begin? Is it when you hit the gym floor, post warm-up? Maybe it's when you start doing something challenging. But what if you helped shift some furniture before you went to the gym? Or you had to sprint to catch a train? Did the clock start ticking and by the time you arrived and got changed, you only had 10 minutes left? What if your job involves manual labour? Does that mean you can only train on your days off? You see how ridiculous this can get? So how do we answer this question? Well, not to get too fairy godmother on you, but the answer was inside you all along. The only way to find the true answer is to listen to the feedback your body is giving you. Remember, you adapt by recovering from your workouts. Your training sessions put your body under stress, and in recovery, it will attempt to adapt to avoid that stress in the future. If you train so hard that you don't fully recover in time for the next workout, then the following workout will suffer. Train too little, on the other hand, and it becomes a wasted opportunity for growth. But much of this comes down to intensity and exercise choices rather than time spent training. So the amount of time you should work out is the amount of time you can put aside without causing undue stress. Then, limited to the amount of time it takes to hit the point that you can fully recover in time for the next workout or physical challenge that you face. That time may change from session to session depending on those parameters, and it may take a fair amount of trial and error to become in tune with your body's feedback. But the more you listen to that feedback, the more sensitive you'll become to it, at which point you no longer need to look at your watch to know when you're done. You just know. Anytime you ask what the best is, the answer will generally be subjective. Even if there is scientific data to suggest that one method outperforms another, either this will have been carried out in a controlled environment, which none of us live in, or it will be based on a collection of people showing that a higher percentage responded in a certain way. In none of these cases do the results apply to you personally. So, as is likely to become my mantra for these questions, context matters. Let's say on paper that it was proven that eating little and often, so following a traditional bodybuilder dietary approach of say 6 or 7 meals per day, is the ultimate route to ramping up your metabolism and burning fat. It isn't, by the way, and the research has been done to prove that. But run with me here, I do have a point. But your work schedule is full on. You barely get 20 minutes during the day for lunch, you have to drop your kids at a childminder before work, so your first meal, for what it's worth, is extremely early in the day. You collect your child after work, then home to make dinner, spend some time with your family, make sure homework gets done before going through the kids' bedtime routine. How on earth are you fitting in 6 or 7 meals? It may be possible cramming some food down your throat between meetings or during your commute, but the stress involved will be huge. So time for mantra number 2. Why did you decide to do this again? If the answer has anything to do with feeling better about yourself, I'm not sure this is doing you any favours. As with many of these questions, I suggest reframing things. Start with a simple tweak. The question could read better as, what is the best diet for me and my current circumstances for weight loss? Now you're obliged to define those circumstances and what you're attempting to achieve, because with those additional elements, no one can answer that question without context. This might also lead you to query the driving force behind this question. Why do you want to lose weight? A fighter trying to drop weight to make their weight class in time for a fight has very different motivation than someone who wants to look better in their swimwear during an upcoming holiday. The fighter is genuinely concerned about their weight, but clearly needs to approach this in a way they can still be in peak fighting condition come round one. The person thinking about their holiday isn't really concerned about their weight, other than as a result of psychological conditioning. They're concerned about how they look, how they feel in their own skin, their body composition, and so on. If all these things improved without weight loss, they wouldn't care about their weight. Similarly, if the weight loss approach left them looking, in their mind, worse, feeling more down on themselves and with deteriorating health, then that approach is hardly the best. To use an analogy, who's the best singer of all time? Ask 1,000 people and you won't get the same answer from everyone because the answer is subjective. But what if we try and measure it? Maybe we measure who has the greatest vocal range. That's something that could be measured, and so by adding that parameter we can possibly determine a winner, or best. But many singers with very little range have been touted as great because of their passion and their tone, so perhaps that becomes the barometer. It's a little trickier to measure, but it could possibly determine a winner. Then again, someone who can sing with soul and passion may only be able to do that in a studio or an intimate setting. Put them in front of a stadium crowd and they crumble. So perhaps we measure based on stage presence and audience interaction. The point being, we can't just ask who's the best without adding parameters, and for each parameter you add, you may get a different answer. Though maybe this argument doesn't stack up because the answer's Freddie Mercury. Obviously. So how do we answer this? Well, firstly I'd suggest that any diet that has strict rules is rarely going to be ideal. Yes, I can hear all the comments already. Well, keto worked for me. I swear by intermittent fasting. My shake-based diet keeps me from cheating.
Following a point system makes things so simple, and I always lose weight when I go back to it.
The trouble with all restrictive diets is they force you to live your life within a box. You're either following the rules or you're failing. It can feel good as you can play the martyr and make a song and dance about how tough it is for you, but it also puts you in an awkward position when you're unable to control the rules. If you're eating with others, you can't measure anything. If you go to an event or a celebration, you might have little control over what you can consume. And if you feel obliged to live within these restrictions, then you either can't go, can't participate, or you feel down on yourself for failing. The ideal dietary approach is always going to be the one you can stick to. So if you're reviewing an option, ask yourself if you can see yourself still doing this in a year's time. Also, if it feels necessary but overly sacrificial, i.e. it'll make you feel miserable, then what's the point? As I've mentioned many times before and will continue to return to, why are you doing this? What are you looking to achieve? Weight loss is a route to something else, and that something else should be enriching your life. If it's a concern about your health, then improved health should be the focus. If you feel uncomfortable in your skin, then feeling better should be the driving force. And if you need to make weight for a fight, a sporting event or similar, then doing well in that event is your motivation. It's never the weight. So if the driving force doesn't excite or inspire you to a level that overwhelms the perceived sacrifice, then this route is not the best for you. In many cases, the ideal solution is to take what you're currently doing and make incremental and deliberate substitutions and improvements. That said, if you're going to look for a template to follow, using culturally based dietary habits as a foundation to your plan is often a better starting point. For example, a Japanese diet, which is often based around fish, rice and vegetables, could be a good jumping off point. And the Mediterranean diet has consistently been shown to be one of the healthiest approaches there is. Even something like a paleo diet can be a good starting point, though this does often get wrapped up into more of a rigid and gimmicky approach. But at its core, the idea of eating food as close to it appears in nature is certainly a good starting point. Which of these approaches you choose when deciding on the best should be guided by your palate. If you don't like fish and can't stomach rice, forcing yourself to eat Japanese cuisine in the hope that it will help you lose weight is clearly a bad idea. Which brings us back to what I said earlier. The best diet is one that is healthy in nature, but you can adopt as part of your lifestyle and stick to. So the only person that can truly answer that question is you. By modifying these questions and having clarity on your goals and why those goals are important to you is by far the best way to ensure you're making good choices. When bench pressing, is it better to use an incline or a flat bench? It may seem like a very basic question, but I've included it because it's a question I answered on Quora and it seems to have taken off. At the time of recording, it's had over 80,000 views and it's the most upvoted piece of content I've submitted, so it seems to be proving helpful. Often the answer is given as do incline for upper, flat for mid, and decline for lower, or something similar, but the pecs are not split that way. Pec major, which is what most people are generally thinking about when looking to develop their pecs, is one muscle. The fibres within it run at different angles as you move from top to bottom, and so there will be a little more emphasis placed higher or lower depending on the angle of the movement. However, when you contract your pecs, you contract your pecs. You're not excluding parts completely regardless of the angle. However, in an incline position, the shoulders are more involved, whereas in a decline position, they're moved further out of the equation. Well, at least that's how it works on paper. Ultimately though, how you lift is more important in the early days of training than the angle. If you're fairly new to training, and I would assume if you're asking this question that's likely the case, then neither is better. If you're trying to save time and use your shoulders more as part of the movement to save doing an overhead press movement, you might consider incline. If you're trying to raise your max lift or overload your nervous system as much as possible, you'd probably be better in a flat position. But if your technique is not great, maybe in an incline position you're able to use a mirror to ensure your forearms stay vertical and your elbows don't flare, though this is something I recommend you do not make a habit of. If your shoulders are exhausted from a previous workout, something you did earlier that day, or in an earlier exercise, flat or decline might be the better option. There are a million ways to look at it. The fact is, it's a tool, a training pattern, a method of engaging and stimulating certain muscle fibres. Which tool you select should not be based on such a broad question. When you're planning to train your body, the question would be better framed as, what do you hope to achieve? Then make a plan that will develop things to move you towards that achievement. Develop weak points, improve movement patterns, but never just do something because someone else said you should. You are unique. Your body's makeup is different to every other one on the planet. Understand the force, stimuli, and challenges you wish to place on it and work from there.
This is an actual question posted on Quora, and perhaps more shockingly, someone has attempted to answer it. To be honest, if this is the type of question you're asking as your priority for moving forwards, I think you might want to reassess your priorities.
These questions may not seem intrinsically linked, but what they all have in common is the fact that they lack clarity. I think what often drives these questions is the hope of a simple, quick fix that's going to unlock progression with minimal effort. If the reason for that is you don't really have the inclination to make changes, it's something you'd like to see happen, but it doesn't feel that important to you, then it's not worthy of your time. Not yet at least. But if the reason you're looking for a shortcut solution is because you have little or no time to spare, then I suggest watching this next for some ideas on how to make improvements and keep moving forward when you don't have time to spare. I'll be answering more questions soon in the bad fitness questions genre, so be sure to click subscribe not to miss them. In the next video, I'll be answering the question, how fast will I see results, amongst others. Catch you then.